Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Nikolas Badminton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Okay. People can hear me. How's it going so far? It's pretty good so far today, right? I was pretty excited. I actually got to chat to Jay a little while ago, and we're like, okay, how can we make sure that we're not covering the same ground? And he's a great guy. He's a great speaker, so it was lovely to see him. I actually studied artificial intelligence and linguistics at university 23 years ago, and it's nice to sort of shoot the breeze with someone that's sort of still at the cutting edge today. And I'm going to go into a little bit about that today. So I've kind of called this, I'm playing with words. This is called Invest in the Future. Right, see what I did there? I'm going to start off with a little story. So I've always been fairly lapsadaisical about savings for the future. You know, I'm going to live forever. What do I need? I was pretty lucky. I put some money into real estate, and I own my own place in Vancouver, so I can be good if I want to move somewhere super cheap after I leave Vancouver, right? But about 4 or 5 years ago, I met an amazing financial advisor, my friend Stan, that's really helped me out and put me back on a track. And I turned 45 this year. I don't feel that I'm going to die cold, lonely, with no money. So this is good. So it's exciting. When I met Kerry and Kimberly and the team at the beginning of the summer, they sort of took me out and sat me down and said, okay, we kind of want to go in and think about the future of financial planning. And then Kerry saw me speak at the Ontario Securities Commission. And he came up, and we were on the phone after. He goes, I don't want that presentation. Thanks. No. But I get it. It's different. Planning is kind of its own thing. It's not banking systems. It's more than that. It's very human. So how do you approach that? I'm actually going to talk about a number of different things. So you've got generational change, and then wealth movement is hugely interesting to me. But then we've got this strange youth, you know, sort of early 20s, the millennials. I'm going to try and decode how they think about saving. And then I'm going to get into some really cool stuff around technology. And I'm going to build on what Jay was saying with artificial intelligence. But I'm going to go into a number of other areas that we may have not thought about thus far. Hopefully going to give you some insights. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of financial planning with all this technology hitting us. And I've got like 5 sort of principles or rules at the end that hopefully we can sort of live by a little bit going forward. I'll put my hand up. I'm not a financial planner, but I've been a strategic advisor for a lot of companies for a lot of years. And what's great is I can look from the outside looking in, and I'd love to chat to you all very briefly after this presentation to see if I'm kind of making any sense or not, right? So are we ready? 3 people are ready. Are we ready? Okay. Sorry, this is what happens when you don't put me on first in the morning. I get more and more excited as the days go on. Okay, so let's look at generations. Boomers, Gen X, millennials. We like to put them into little pots of different attitudes and different uses of technology and how we operate. But what's really interesting is that there's an attitudinal change towards investing that's starting to span all of these people. Now, we're starting to understand that I'm a Gen Xer, right? We like to break the world. Like my parents didn't put baby on board stickers in the back of their car, right? The millennials had like 15 baby on board stickers. Those stick men probably, right? We'll get more into that. But like really, the generational changes is the first thing that I started to look at. And trying to crack the nut of what the future of financial planning was really thinking about what are the attitudes with this. And when I started to think about that, it was like, you know what? The silent generation are passing their money down, the boomers are passing their money down, the Gen Xers are holding on to as much as they can, and there's trickle down. In fact, in North America, over the next few decades, there's going to be a $30 trillion movement of cash. That's a lot of money, right? It's incredible. So what's going to happen? I mean, everyone in the audience is like, this is a great opportunity for us, right? We can help people. We're going to need more financial planners. You know, there's going to be 4,000 people in 10 years' time at one of the future FPSC events. But what's really interesting is, between 2031 and 2045, which coincidentally coincides with artificial intelligence and technological changes becoming even more powerful, there's going to be 10% of wealth changing hands every 5 years. So that's never really been seen before in this sort of ferocity, right? So we're going to have to stay on top of things and understand why those changes are happening. What's really interesting is if you look at the S&P 500, the average age of a company in the S&P 500 was about 33 years old. The average age of a company in the S&P 500 is around about 15 years old now. So what do you invest in from a stock portfolio or an index perspective? It's getting more complex, right? What's really interesting, in the next decade, there's going to be a $750 billion movement for us, right? So we're going to have to stay on top of what's happening there. And then the expectations are different. It's kind of weird. Like boomers are expecting, 48% of boomers are expecting inheritance. People like me want 62% of inheritance. I actually don't care about inheritance. I never got it from my grandmother. My parents are literally going to burn all their cash before they pass away. They keep telling me this. It's kind of dire in the Badminton household. And 80% of millennials are like, oh, I can't wait for my inheritance, right? Especially as it becomes more difficult to own property, right? And to do the things that our parents did. And that takes us on to millennials. These soft, squishy, self-feed, interesting, youth group, right? Time. 81% of millennials are more likely to spend on travel than save for the future. Shock horror. Millennials reply, what future? Right? I don't think you can get more millennial than that, but what's really interesting is the old world was, you're born, you go to college, you work a 9-to-5 job, you might get married, you have children, and then you retire, right? Millennials do not think like this anymore. No, not all of them. In fact, there's a large majority of them that think like this. I don't want to own anything. I know there's no privacy in the world. I'm not really going to have a career. In fact, I'm going to do so many things throughout my life. I can't define it as a career. I'm going to do lots of jobs. I'm going to do lots of creative projects. My whole life will be projects. And they're not wrong to think that way. In fact, our lives are going to move that way as a wholesale thing. And we're never going to retire, right? If I look back to the UK, they keep raising the retirement age. It's the same conversation over here in Canada and other parts of the world. It's like, I'm 45 this year. I hope to be wheeled on stage at the age of 80, 1 week away from death, to do another presentation like this, right? Still earning money, still out there, still connecting with people. There's a value to that. I don't really want to be a snowbird down in Palm Springs. I was in Palm Springs 2 weeks ago, and I had a great time. But I'm not going to do that for 6 months a year. It's not really in the scheme of things. Millennials are kind of in this weird Zen Buddhism state. Imagine if you didn't own anything, and you could live out of a suitcase, and you could live wherever you want, and you could be a nomad. This is how people are thinking. In fact, millennials have got such a disdain about talking about financial pieces of their life that they actually equate going to the bank with having the equivalent of a root canal. Right? It's serious. They would actually prefer financial services from Google, Amazon, PayPal, the other tech companies, because they connect with them. They don't connect with the big banks anymore. And why should they? The big banks operate in ways that aren't really speaking to millennials. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. They're planning for financial freedom, not for financial retirement. And financial freedom doesn't just happen when you're 65 or 55 or whenever. It happens when you're 21 and 27 and 32 and 33 and 40, right? Multiple times in their lives, they just go and do whatever they want to do, right? And so they should. So such a small amount of millennials are actually planning for retirement, 37%, right? But 63% are actually planning for lifestyle goals. I want to own a tiny home and live on Vancouver Island. I want to buy a van and travel around the world. I want to build my own business. I want to be independent, right? And more of them spend their money on travel than anything else, and on dining, and then on fitness, right? So attitudinally, millennials are not like the majority of the customers that you have. In fact, they say that the millennials, one of the first things they're going to do when their parents give them some money is that they're going to fire their financial planners. Right? I've been reading these reports, and it's like, okay, maybe don't put that on a slide, but it's definitely worth a voiceover piece, right? But we've got a situation because they're still going to have the troubles and the woes. They're still going to be worried. They're still going to be worried about, how do I pay my bills? How do I have a certain amount of comfort so that I'm not always scrabbling for cash? And you know what? When millennials hit 40 years old, they're really not going to have the same attitudes that they have today as like 23, 24. So they are going to evolve a little bit. They're going to have responsibility, but they've got this schizophrenic sort of paralysis. Sometimes they just sit there. They don't know what to do, and it's for us to help them. Millennials don't want to be managed. They like to be led, coached, and mentored. This generation is on fire and ready to go, and that's from Farshad Azal, who's actually a leadership coach. Coached, led, and mentored. This is the world. They don't just want to have advice fired at them. They want to be coached, and that's an ongoing process, not seeing my financial advisor like twice a year, going snowboarding with him every couple of weeks during the winter season, and like course correcting what's going on, right? So millennials, strange, interesting world that they're living in, and that's going to bleed out into the other generations as well. But then we've got technology. So let's look at how technology sort of come and impacted us. This is a guy called Douglas Engelbart. In 1968, Douglas Engelbart did something called the mother of all demos down at Stanford University. And he showed a number of different things. He showed desktop publishing on a personal computer. He was the inventor of the mouse. He had a trackpad. He did video conferencing. In fact, he sort of revolutionized how we think about computing. So he introduced the idea of the personal computer. And then now, in 2007, Steve Jobs stands up and says, in my hand, I've got an internet communicator, I've got a phone, and I've got a music player. It's the iPhone. And they just came out with the iPhone 10, right? And what's been happening in the world? Like, is there anyone in the room that doesn't have a phone? Is there anyone in the room that doesn't have, there's always one person. Is there anyone in the room that doesn't have a smartphone? Wow, you're the first audience this year that's like 100% smartphone, right? Normally there's some people that's like, I don't have a phone. They're the security people. And then there's some people that don't have smartphones and they haven't quite got it yet. But we live in a world that's surrounded by mobile technology. It's how we do business. It's how we do communications. It's how we live our lives. It's how we stay close to each other and our families. So 6 billion people in the world have got access to mobile communications. That's more people in the world that have got access to clean running water, and about 2 billion more people in the world that have got access to toothbrushes. It's a pretty gross thought, right? But it's growing. About 1.7 billion smartphones will be sold just this year alone. In fact, by 2020, there'll be a dominant force of smartphones in the world, where it'll be about 6.5 billion smartphones in the world by 2020. And why is this happening? Well, Ajay was talking about the economists, and they're like, everything's getting cheaper. As everything's getting cheaper, the penetration of technology is getting higher, and that upswing and that slingshot is called exponential growth. We don't grow at 5% every year. We don't grow at 10% every year. We grow in a way that's disruptive, and it doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles until you've just got this slingshot, this rocket ship up of adoption. It took about 18, 20 years for people to take on board mobile phones. It took about 65, 75 years for them to have landlines installed, right? So there's a step change. And we've seen that happen in the markets as well. So if you look at 2001, GE and Microsoft, Exxon, Citi, and Walmart, right? Seems like a balanced portfolio. Fast forward to 2016, and this is still the same today. The most powerful companies by market cap: Apple, Alphabet, who own Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. In fact, some people are speculating that Amazon could be the first trillion-dollar market cap company in the world. And Jay talked about Amazon a lot. I'll talk a little bit about them later on too. And why? It's about big data. Data is the new oil. It's the thing that gets taken out of systems, and we create it as well, gets refined and used, and ultimately becomes wisdom. It's the thing that makes these companies money. We use their products. We are the product. So data is the new oil, is the way that the world is thinking. In fact, by 2025, we're going to have about 163 zettabytes of data being generated every single year. That's an enormous amount of data. If you actually put that into terms that you can maybe understand, it's like having a billion movies in high definition encoded and stored every single year. But a billion. That's a lot of data, right? And we generate that. And then I look at like information theory, right? We take the data, we turn that into information, knowledge, and wisdom. And what really we're going to talk about a little bit here today is that we are driving the wisdom economy. We are right at the top of that pyramid, right? But today, we do a lot of the tasks of like getting through the data, getting through the information, and transferring that into knowledge and education. Well, that's going to kind of change. Okay, because we talked about millennials and technology and the changing world and how we've evolved, I can't do it without talking about social, and also how social media is being used by financial planners as well. So 78% of young adults use their friends' financial habits to determine their own. So today more than ever, kids are listening to everyone else, and people are looking at what everyone else is excited about, and they're making determinations of what they should do in their lives based on what they hear, including financial advice as well. And they go to Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. And do you know what? There's been a resurgence around things like Twitter. Snapchat's struggling a little bit. Facebook's going to be the absolute dominant force, especially Instagram as well. And this is how people think today, right? Facebook statuses used to just have a like, but that didn't just work. So like, love, haha, wow, sad, angry. If you read this from left to right, it feels like a relationship. It blew my mind when my friend told me that about 3 months ago. But it's also like how people are expressing themselves. And who's on Snapchat here? Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. I tried Snapchat for a while. It just eats your data. I couldn't get into it. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, who would have thought you'd stand in front of your camera and put all these funny faces and pretend to be dogs, right? But what's interesting, advisors are starting to use it. 18% of advisors surveyed, they said they're using Snapchat for business. And among advisors aged 29 and younger, 83% are snapping and 23% of them are using the app for business. How many of you people on Snapchat are using your app for business with your clients? No? Aha! Maybe you should start doing that. The people that aren't using Snapchat in the room, install it, and you'll be there for like 3 hours just looking at it. It took me so long to work out how to use it. It's not built for people like me, right? But then there's social listening and participating. This is where it gets really quite interesting. You know, fake news and all of the influence that happens in the world. So this is one example I like to talk about. So a couple of years ago, you had the Associated Press's Twitter account was hacked, and they said that there was a bunch of bombings at the White House, and Obama was injured, and the market fell by $2 billion. It recovered very quickly, but who's listening? It's not just the kids, it's the stock market as well, right? Carl Icahn, very famous investor, made some comments and wrote a letter to Tim Cook and Apple about the valuation and how he thought it was worth more than they were saying, and put $8 billion worth of market cap on Apple in that day. You can't even predict that as a financial planner, right? But then you've got people like this guy, Michael Kitces, who actually uses social media to build up his business, to build his portfolio. He's tripled his business by having a social media presence. I mean, hands up who uses social media actively for their financial planning businesses, right? I think we all need to wake up a little bit and realize that these are channels that can be incredibly useful to influence what's going on and to build our profile. Now, financial planners, about 81% of the people that were questioned in the survey of younger financial planners said that they used social media for business, with 79% getting new clients through that channel as well. The recommendations come through social media. They don't come through friend networks in the same way as they always used to. And do you think the kids are listening to their parents? I don't think so. What's really interesting is over 50% of the people in the survey that I said about here said that they gained over $1 million in client assets under management by using social as well. It's good. It's good business, right? We'd all like a bit of that. Okay, social media. Hands up who's going to go away and start their social media campaigns now, everyone. You should. Okay, applications. We've all got smartphones, so we've all got applications. Talk a little bit about a company called Monzo. This is a bank. Some people around the age of 30 started in the UK. They raised all the money that they needed to start the bank in 90 seconds on a Kickstarter-like platform. In fact, the first time they tried to start this bank, I think they were raising about £5 to £7 million in the UK. The platform broke immediately because of the demand. A friend of mine came over to Vancouver last year and had this card and this app. And that was it. That was the bank. So the way that people are just managing their money is changing. There's Venmo down in the States. You know, I owe you $15. Here's $15, like with an emoji. Yeah? Do you know what? They're getting it right. They've created a positive experience around moving money. You know, it's like, hey, here's the money I owe you, like, thumbs up, right? Pretty much, I wonder what the percentage is of, like, you know, crying face, you know? They've created an experience. And what we do as financial planners is create experiences. You know, from when we sit down with people in offices, from the emails that we have, from the social media that we do, that's all being replicated, but in an application that's in everyone's pockets, right? So we have to double down and work hard at that. There's this application called Doe. That uses some artificial intelligence called Sophie to help connect people's different accounts together and helps people actually organize and inform what's going on across different accounts. And they've integrated Amazon's Alexa and Siri from your iPhone into the whole experience as well, so that people are talking to their phones. And then you've got this company here. This is Lemonade. Has anyone heard of Lemonade? It's a company out of New York City that helps you do home insurance. You can kind of set up your own account in about 60 seconds. What's really fantastic about Lemonade, and they started off small in New York City, and major insurance companies have poured money into them because they see this as the future, is that they've created something called Jim. It's kind of nice to have a male AI, right? And this is how Jim helps you submit a claim. I'll give you a bit of a voiceover to this. So what you do is you pick up the phone and you put in the details of what you're claiming, you hold it up, it takes a short video of you, you say what it is that happened, you say what it is that you want to claim, they say thank you very much, and they handle the whole thing, they say in processing time in about 6 seconds. Obviously it takes about 30 seconds to do that. Artificial intelligence. Do you know what? How do you tell if someone's lying? You analyze their facial expressions. With claims forms. Like, who loves filling out claims forms? So everyone's just going, yep, there's good. So, oh, yeah, we're sending you the money straight away for your stolen MacBook Pro. But I'm sure there's some cases like, yeah, we just don't believe you. And it'll go to another stage of arbitration, right? It's a great way of building trust. We talked about trust earlier in judgment. And then moving on from that, it's a nice segue to talk about artificial intelligence. Ajay was already saying how disruptive artificial intelligence will be. He was also saying that there's a timeline to it and we're not quite there yet. I'm going to add the word yet to everything that Ajay said earlier today, because eventually there's going to be a lot of power. In fact, Andrew Ng, who's from Stanford and went on to work for Baidu and now working on a number of other companies as well, says that AI is the new electricity. It's everywhere. When the world had electricity for the first time, it changed everything, right? In fact, the AI landscape is rich and busy, full of people, and there's lots of money going into it. And it's going to have a positive effect on the world. In fact, by 2030, artificial intelligence is expected to provide a $15.7 trillion boost to GDP worldwide. It's going to be everywhere. It changes everything. So this is where I start with this, with bots. And I hope we've got the sound working, because there's a video in here as well, friends. So bots, where do we start? Do you remember Clippy from Microsoft? Right? I see you're writing a letter. It's like, oh, cancel. It looks like you're writing a resignation letter. But I sort of start here because, people have tried to build bots and technology to help us for a long, long time. I don't think we quite got it right. AI isn't cutesy like Clippy anymore, right? It's normally a person, but it's not really a person. Digital assistants are rising. We know this is happening. Lots of companies are coming out. Amazing Canadian company, Fin.ai, is working with a number of banks, helping them with customer inquiries and advisement. Really cool. Go and check them out. Digit, Trims, Obi, other companies as well. And it's growing and growing as a business. And this brings us into the dreaded robo-advisors. Yeah? And we've read and we've spoken a lot about them. But I'm going to go a little deeper on this as well. Are we good with audio there, friends? I hope so. And we're not good with audio. This one's really difficult to narrate. I don't speak Japanese. Okay, let's leave it. And I'm going to try and narrate this. So what's happening? In some banks in Japan and South Korea, you walk in and there's a robot that greets you and advises you somewhat and then points you in the right direction. Then what we've got robo-advisors that are now processing trillions of rows of data right up to date and making decisions about the best way to actually invest. And they're finding out that the robo-advisors are delivering more return than the humans that are trying to advise in the same way. In fact, in a minute, it's just going to show us how much that's going to be. This is actually a big South Korean service that a lot of people are using. Yeah, you see, the robo-advisor is up by 2% versus domestic equity funds in Kospi as well, which are all down. They make better advice. And what this guy's saying, he's talking about how he wants empathy and connection, an emotional connection with those systems, and that's what humans provide, right? So there's still an opportunity for us to be part of the process. But robo-advisors is absolutely going to come and disrupt every single person's job in this room. Now, we can play with them, and some people might choose to play with them on their own. But really, they're going to have to come back to us and try and work out what the hell has been said within there. What's really interesting is it's forecasted by 2020 that robo-advisors could manage about 10% of global assets. So it's definitely going to change. Actually, in Japan, this company, Mitsuo, is actually planning to cut 19,000 jobs using robo-advisory services, right? And fintech services. So you're actually going to see this trend with large banking organizations and advisory services within them actually reducing headcount, because the people that are going to be in there can use technology to do even more. And then we've got companies like Wealthfront and Betterment, Acorns and WealthBar, that you could sign up in 60 seconds now, and you could deposit $100 in the next 60 seconds, and you're off and running. And over time, you can build a you can build a relationship with that application. I was chatting to someone last night, and they said, oh, we were just talking about that, and my son was suddenly down in his phone. And he said, oh, yeah, I've just set up a Wealthfront account, and I've just deposited this money, and now I'm doing this. It's like, wow, you actually do something pretty cool, Mom. And it's not, right? It's different. And then it gets even more funky with conversational AI. So you've got Amazon Alexa, right? Has anyone got an Amazon Alexa at home? Yeah, more people are going to start having them as well. And what's interesting is you can ask what the weather's like and whatever, and but there's some companies that are taking it one step further. UBS has actually partnered with Amazon, and Amazon is partnering with thousands of companies all around the world in multiple industries to embed their technology into it. So people can ask Alexa about the federal rate increases and do a number of queries about bank accounts just by saying, Alexa, how much money do I have in my savings account? And how much has that changed in the last 3 weeks? And it will tell you. Don't have to even reach for your phone. There's a whole separate discussion about the absolute future of user experience, and it's going to be about voice. But I'm not going to go into that too much here. But there's lots of experimentation. So you've got companies like FIS and USAA, Visa, Fiserv, or whoever are actually doing competitions to see what they can do to hack their own businesses to try and change how that world works when they're using conversational AI. It's absolutely coming. Obviously, Alexa's not the only one. You've got Google Home, and you've got other ones as well. But with all these changes in technology and attitudes, how's work going to change? Now, experts actually think that in the next decade, we'll lose between 2 and 6 million jobs in the financial industry, right? Which is sort of the shocker. Now, I don't think things are just lost. I think that people do different jobs, right? So I think it's about redeployment, not unemployment. History's told us that when you put the spinning jenny in factories, the people that used to weave the linen became designers, or they used to do the dyeing themselves, right? They just changed. They found that like early 1900s, the 40% of Americans that worked in the fields, it's now about 2%. But what are those people doing? What are those people that would work in fields do now? They do something completely different. So I think things are going to ebb and flow and change, and I think that there's a mantra to think here about artificial intelligence and the changes that will come, which will be it will adjust how you do your work. So your job will be very different, but you'll be incredibly empowered. This is really interesting. So like these researchers went around the world and chatted to all the other researchers in AI, some of the most significant people in the world, and they think that within 45 years, about 50% there's a 50% chance that AI outperforms human tasks. And within 120 years, full automation of all human jobs. Again, it assumes destruction of jobs, not creation of new ones. I kind of like the idea that in 120 years, we could be potentially living in a Star Trek world. No one earns anything, no one owns anything. It's unlikely going to happen like that. But this is really about applied artificial intelligence. If you chat to people that are serious about developing it, it's not about, Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator walking around the corner and changing everything. It's about applying, in a very narrow sense, what artificial intelligence can do. And people like Accenture and other consultancies and industries are saying that in the future, banking and financial transactions will be enhanced through artificial intelligence. It's about experience. And what do people crave? Great experience. And I added this section as well, blockchain. So the blockchain is what Bitcoin's built on. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. It's a software protocol. It's a decentralized and open ledger. It's a secure network. It's a great way of storing information and to have transactions encoded and undertaken in a way that's very efficient. And there's a big ecosystem behind this. Lots of companies are developing software, and lots of companies are implementing it in their businesses. And why? Because you can unbundle ownership, you can support cryptocurrencies, distributed organizations, lower the cost of transactions, lower the liquidity cost of payments, right, in emerging markets. It's really interesting. Countries like Venezuela have abandoned their currencies, and now they're using things like Bitcoin a lot more. Same with Africa. So this is technology that's a fundamental underpinning of some of the systems that we may use, and it's kind of useful. One of the things that's really useful is smart contracts. So we might have a movement of money from one fund to another fund. Normally it goes through paperwork, it goes in, it gets recorded, gets put into a centralized database. It's not that secure. Maybe it gets lost along the way. Typically it doesn't, but sometimes it might. Smart contracts, you could literally do a transaction then and there, and everyone within the blockchain, so every single person in this room would have a copy of that transaction encrypted so that you could never lose the evidence that a transaction has been undertaken. Right? Incredibly powerful, especially when you're doing lots of contracts. Imagine a world where you didn't have to say, sign here, sign there. Can you sign here, here, and here? And then I get a phone call. We forgot to sign 3 pages, and I drive back across town. I sign another 3 pages. It happens, right? Happens to me, unfortunately. So 77% of organizations are expected to adopt blockchain. I think you actually, in the financial planning realm, and the people that you work with, especially in the markets indexes and funds and whatever, are going to be adopting this. So you'll see that popping up quite a lot. And let's talk about the big hairy elephant in the room as well with regards to investment. Who owns Bitcoin in the room? Yeah, drinks are on you, buddy. But like, there's a bubble. Was it Bitcoin's worth about 10,000 Canadian dollars this morning when I checked up, right? Actually, and this is wild, I was working this out this morning. A $10,000 investment in 2012 would now be worth over $16 million. Hands up who's ever got that return for one of their customers. It's the Wild West. It's not normal. It's kind of a toxic currency because you've got various organized crime organizations washing their money through it. You've got good people in there. You've got people that are still pumping lots of money in, and there's lots of people that are never going to take their money out because on paper they're worth a lot of money. Right? It's like being a property millionaire. You're only a millionaire when you sell your property, right? You're only a Bitcoin millionaire if you take $1 million out. I've actually known people do it. I know someone here in Toronto that invested $20,000 a few years ago and took out $4.6 million and bought a hotel. It's wild, absolutely wild. And there's some positive stories, there's some very strange stories in Bitcoin. But what's interesting is, let's look at millennials and how they think about Bitcoin. Right? 30% would choose Bitcoin over government bonds. 22% would choose Bitcoin over real estate, and 19% would choose Bitcoin over gold. And how's Bitcoin securitized? It's not, right? And this causes a lot of headaches for regulators and other people. It causes me a huge headache to even understand how the hell this could happen. This is how I feel about Bitcoin. It's one of those situations that it's a phenomenon of the internet. It's suddenly this fund that's worth all this money, that's difficult to transact in, that's difficult to take money out of. I mean, the other day, I knew someone that tried to take $50 out of a Bitcoin ATM, and there's 250 Bitcoin ATMs in Canada alone. It took 25 minutes, because with blockchain technology, you have to propagate the transaction across the entire blockchain. So it's like, I want $50, and you're like, okay, I've recorded that, and then you have to, oh, I've recorded that, I've recorded that, I've recorded that, I've recorded that, and you have to wait 25 minutes, you get your $50, right? It's not easy. There's some shortfalls. And this brings me into sort of this part of like, how are we evolving and how we are changing with that world? So advisors must use automation behavioral management alongside portfolio and planning services to be competitive in the future. This is from Dan Arnold, who's the CEO of LPL, who was a big advisory conference recently. Yeah? It's about us working alongside the machine. And if we go back to our information model, right, the real-world decision-making is changed with the introduction of these technologies like artificial intelligence. In fact, we pull the data, we meet the client, we teach and coach, we provide judgment, advice, and action. Today, we do that manually, right? With algorithms and artificial intelligence, that model changes somewhat. Right? Imagine having a Harvard grad on your team with 800 years of experience that looks at the impact of every financial event around the world every single day and knows every client anniversary and sources all the information and how it applies to your book, like instantly. That's like what artificial intelligence will fundamentally do for your business as a financial planner. Like everyone kind of wants that, right? It sounds really attractive. And companies are striving to create that. So it changes the world. Artificial intelligence greases the machine that takes us up to wisdom faster than ever before. We're not wasting time chugging through data, information, and knowledge. It's important, but what do people want? They want wisdom. They want wisdom from us. We're in the wisdom economy, right? It's about human and the machine. It's about you and the machines that we can use. This will be fundamentally how you do your business going forward. Because at the top in wisdom will be humans and artificial intelligence in an advisory capacity dictating what and how people should do around investing. But again, Ajay was talking about judgment, but really, it's really hard to encode empathy, humor, creativity, problem solving, right? A computer's not going to call you up on your birthday and have a quick 15-minute chat just to see if you're okay. It's not going to empathize if you've lost a loved one. It's not going to laugh at your jokes, although some people might build AI that pretends to laugh at your jokes. Some days I wish I had that. But the problem solving, the creativity is a human thing. I can't put the word yet next to any of these with artificial intelligence. I think that it's almost impossible to encode these human values and human traits into a machine. You can replicate them and kind of simulate them, but it's never going to be like human-to-human interaction. And it's really about trust and judgment. And this is like the judgment sandwich between me and Ajay. The judgment that we give with the context of information from artificial intelligence and big data and the applications that people are using is going to be important. If I certify the technology or robo I'm using for you, you're trusting me, not the machine. This is Robert Merton, who's actually a Nobel laureate from MIT. You're trusting me, not the machine. It's really difficult, if I go to one of the applications to drop my money, just trusting it without knowing how it works. In artificial intelligence circles, like to know how it's learning is kind of like the white boxing of a solution. You know how it works. Not many of the companies are really opening their doors. It's like, trust us, it's fine, just trust us. It doesn't always sit comfortably with people, right? And this is where I talk about hybridity. Now, this will be a phrase that you'll start seeing a lot in the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to build hybrid systems, and hybridity will be the thing that will define one of the skills that we have, which is like we're hybrids of man or woman and machine, right? So you've got the robo-advisor, right? Intuitive onboarding, omni-channel access, tax loss harvesting, real-time reporting, great. Mix that with the advisor, holistic financial planning, universal product offering, accountability, and trust. And that hybrid model is going to be the thing that drives the industry forward. It's really interesting. There's a lot of people reading about it. I'm going to be sharing these slides, and there's links at the bottom of every slide that leads to articles that I'm talking about. There's probably about 75 articles in this whole presentation that you should go away and read. It's a lot, and it's all really worth your time. Yeah, and the advisor, you increase your capacity. You attract and retain like clients. You enhance your digital capability. You're more attractive, ultimately, as an advisor. Then for a customer, it's like on-demand access via platforms, flexible fees, potentially, holistic wealth management. They feel happy. The experience is good. And then more attitudinal change as well. Once you've got all these systems in place, people are thinking differently. They don't just want a return that's profit, like cash, on their original investment. Sometimes it goes bigger than this. Socially responsible investing is probably one of the biggest things that I see actually being acted upon by millennials. So, divestment, impact investing, positive investment, community investment, giving something back, and what you get back is more around the heart than it is around the bank account, right? So millennials are 2 times likely versus the overall population to invest in companies targeting social or environmental goals. Why do you think the biggest technology companies in the world are going to renewable, sustainable energy 100%? Responsibility around what you use. 75% of people think that their investments can influence climate change, right? That's why all companies are going to be on the downward slide for a long, long time, to their very small part of the economy. Albertans hate it when I say that. And 84% say their investments can lift people out of poverty. People are thinking more differently about the world and what they can give to it. And then you've got companies like Benevity, a Canadian company. 2 million users around the world donate to more than 100,000 global charities just this year in 2017. So workplace giving and volunteering, grants management, fundraising campaigns, disaster relief, international programs, and goodness consulting. All of these things are becoming incredibly important for people. Yeah, we're becoming more heart-focused. That leads us to some opportunities, and this is sort of the final part of the presentation. If I was going to give you some advice, what would that advice be? Now, we've looked at all of these trends around millennials and technologies, the wealth movement, the opportunities that live there. It's probably a little overwhelming and a little bit scary that this world is coming at us. But there are opportunities for us to step into it and lean into it and change our businesses and to actually benefit from this as well. So number 1, I've got 5 pieces of advice. Number 1, be the guide for millennials to help them understand on how investments and savings will positively impact their life today. Because you can talk about 20, 30, 40 years in the future. I mean, my advisor does it with me, and it makes absolutely no sense. It's difficult for me to think about me being 55, let alone 65, right? Number 2, maintain the human face by providing more empathetic connection while tapping into the power of big data and artificial intelligence. Be that human face, trust and judgment. Remember that, yeah? Number 3, use new channels for connection and don't be afraid of showing how you live your lives and make your investments. Transparency. It's like, what do you do? Like, you're asking me to do all this, but what do you do? And are you taking some chances? I've got to connect with you. You've got to be my friend, right? Number 4, create a balanced view of donation, socially conscious, green, and ethical investing for everyone. I think we should all do that. And I think it's going to be really important. Like, Sharia investing is really interesting. I haven't spoken about that here, but go and take a look at that. Really, really good stuff. Number 5, don't be afraid to encourage experimentation. It keeps investing fresh and exciting. Now, that's not to say that we're going to take all of your money and buy half a Bitcoin. Don't do that. Right. In fact, I'm not giving you any advice in this presentation. That's the caveat, so you can't come back and sue me, okay? But really, experimentation, trying new platforms. Did that work for you? Oh, it's not working for me. Do you feel like you're getting the return? No. It's like, oh, can we get a bit risky? Do you want to be risky? Well, is that a good idea right now with the markets? The crash is coming. But experimentation is going to be important, even if you just do it in a little way, and you can just see some changes, right? Those companies that I spoke about earlier, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, they've put $180 billion on their market cap this year. They're outperforming the S&P. They're doing incredible things. Something like $18, $19 billion were put on their market cap in just one day. And that was just Amazon 3 weeks ago. Things are very exciting. Maybe there's some experimentation opportunities to be had. That's the end of this presentation. I'm happy to take your questions. We'll be sharing the slides, but welcome to the future of financial planning. Thank you very much. I don't have a clock up here, so I don't know how much time. One question. Who's got the most important question in the room? Okay, one question. Yes, you at the front. Hi.
Will banks be the next
Will banks become the new e-commerce Amazon kind of industries? Banks will change a little bit. Amazon will become a bank, Facebook will become a bank. Apple's already looking at it with Apple Pay, and they're certainly looking at it from a banking perspective. Telecoms companies are becoming banks. Orange, the company out of France, have basically created like a Monzo kind of account where you can manage your money. And they've got access to nearly 300 million people globally. It's like instant bank. So banks are going to change. But what's going to come is everyone's going to come in and change their industry from under their feet? It's a great question. Thank you very much. Thanks.